Eagles and Browns tonight, Thursday Night Football. This is on NFL Network at 6:30, by the way, if you want to scout up the opposition a little bit. I'm at least interested. I'm curious. You can't tell a lot from the preseason, but they've added some, really good young defensive players over the last couple of years. And, I'm just hoping to tune in and not see a guy like Jordan Davis or Nakobe Dean flying around and making all the plays on top of what their rookie two defenders are going to do. It's been a really productive year as far as getting value out of that draft. And now we see how many hit and how many are going to emerge as stars. That's really the key to staying on top is continuing to draft at a high level, and no doubt the Cowboys and Eagles have been two of the best at it. It is unclear who all is playing. If you're Nick Sirianni, there's no decision to be made on Jalen Hurts, right? We have our formula. We don't need anything crazy to happen. We saw how bad we played last year when he was in the game. We haven't changed anything offensively other than the offensive coordinator. So, is that enough for you guys to want to press Jalen Hurts into some action?
Not for me, man. Not for me, but you guys know how I feel about this. Andy Reid, everybody does a little bit differently. Andy Reid's playing Pat Mahomes. So, I guess I could understand some coaches like to do this. I don't feel the need for it, and especially with the guy who has a tendency to want to take off and run sometimes, and maybe Jalen Hurts would know, hey, it's a preseason game. I'm not running at all, and maybe it would be a 1 or 2 series kind of deal. You keep it simple, but to me, it's like, then what's even the point here? What are you actually getting out of this? So I wouldn't play with fire. But everybody's different.
Tanner McKee, Ian Book, just go ahead and play those. Depending on what you think about Marcus Mariota, too. Are you trying to learn about Marcus Mariota?
I would play Mariota.
Or is this one of those things that you're like, he is going to be the backup and you got to figure out what you're going to do with McKee? McKee was one of those guys that came from Stanford, the rookie.
Bag ass.
He was not very good.
You and I hated him.
There were a lot of times you watch Stanford football and you could kind of see why David Shaw got fired or left, with that situation. This kid was a highly touted player, and, he did not play very well at all. Stanford had a really rough year, but, Ian Book is another guy, like I say, was at Notre Dame. Maybe you're trying to figure out those your third quarterback. I'd just go ahead and play those cats and go from there.
Okay, so Eagles tonight in Thursday Night Football in New York here as we continue around the NFC East. Their second-year pass rusher, Kayvon Thibodeau, called out by defensive coordinator Wink Martindale. He's another one of those old-school guys. And I bet Eric Bieniemy would appreciate this reaction. He said, players love to know what they need to get better at. I have no problem being called out. The last thing anybody needs at this level of the game is for someone to blow smoke to them. And that's exactly the kind of mindset that you need right there. And that could turn into a really nasty Giants defensive line pretty quick if Kayvon Thibodeau realizes his huge potential here soon. With the Cowboys, I'm going to give you a Mike Fisher story. It says the Cowboys should look into former Broncos guard Dalton Risner. I don't know if I want them to sign him or not. I'd have to jump in the film room and see what the tape looks like from last year with Risner, who was in Denver. But I love the idea of being resourceful now and turning over every stone. Last year they brought in the former Eagle Jason Peters. I wonder if there is a veteran offensive lineman that you could add to this to give you a little bit better security. Or do you guys feel like what we've seen so far in camp with the depth is enough? If just, throwing it out there, Terrence Steele isn't 100%, or you have something happen when Tyron Smith has to miss games. Do you like the depth, or do you want them poking around here on Dalton Risner or somebody else?
I would bring in Dalton Risner, and I do think that they got to be paying attention. And we saw this, I saw this up at in the press box, and Brian can attest to this. They probably are sending scouts to other preseason games. There's a Baltimore Ravens scout who's dedicated to just, hey, I'm going to come and watch the Cowboys and Jags. So they're keeping tabs on other teams' personnel to see, hey, is this a guy, one, we might want to trade for? Two, is this a guy, if he gets cut, can that be a surplus that we can add to our roster? But I don't think that from what we've seen that I'd feel great about Matt Waletzko having to be thrust into duty right now, or TJ Bass, or a Matt Farniak, who now I think is your backup center. Maybe Hoffman ends up making strides there, but Mike McCarthy last week was saying Farniak's going to get more run as a backup center.
Yeah, and, it's tough at this point in the summer to find quality. He has started 62 of the last 66 games. He has only given up 8 sacks in 4 years, and Spotracker over the cap estimates his contract at 4 years and $40 million. So maybe it's a situation where he needs to be humbled by the market And when that dollar figure comes into range, maybe it's 2 years and $12 million or something like that, a team's there for the taking. But, sometimes guys are able to put up stats like this and they really can't play. Yeah. And that's where you rely on guys like Brian. And there's usually a very good reason that a guy who's been starting for 4 years is still available this late in the offseason.
Yeah, it really doesn't make sense when you consider the fact of the position and how short on supply we are at the offensive line, where you're willing to give almost anybody who meets the size requirements hey, dude, you're big enough. Let's see what you got, because it's not like anybody has an embarrassment of riches at this particular position. I did see Matt Miller yesterday, funny as it is, just randomly unprovoked, tweeting out Matt Miller's an ESPN draft kind of guy. And he just tweeted out, I can't believe Dalton Risner's not on the team. He's absolutely a starting guard in the NFL.
Okay.
So there is some of that sentiment for him, but there's got to be a good reason why this guy is not being picked up.
He might just be asking for too much money.
Well, he's a descending player. This is what
remember
Gang of Seven?
Yeah,
we were talking about this all the time.
It wasn't great.
One of my guys who is a pro personnel guy, director in the league, he said, I asked him, I said, Dalton Risner. He says, descending player, he's just a grinded out, short range player. Slow feet, slow on the move, struggles to bend, has to win with hand use, short area, and his toughness. So, when you start talking about, is this a guy?
There's no upside there.
Yeah. What is the upside?
He's a try-hard jobber.
Yeah. It's one of those things that, to me, when you start to talk about, the one thing that the Cowboys short-range player, okay, that means that he's not able to get out to second levels. He's not, we're trying to work more, get out on the screens. Be a little bit more athletic on, in those positions.
That's a great point.
And, all of a sudden, when you start talking about describing a guy, that is like they say always a phone booth player, or, a guy that's just small area.
At what point do you accept that with this depth? He's better than anything else here.
Well, that's the thing about it is, depending on what you kind of feel like with some of the young guys. I mean, TJ Bass went from we were at training camp, and I'm not noticing TJ Bass at all. And then all of a sudden you get to watch the All-22, and you're thinking, wait a minute, is it the fact that he was going against the Cowboys front seven that made him look just ordinary? Or then now he's going against Jacksonville and he's blocking those guys, and now he's getting first team reps.
Yeah.
So can TJ Bass be a better option than, say, a Dalton Risner that might be a limited player? The only thing that's inviting to me with him is it sounds like he's a veteran guy.
He's a veteran. He's got experience. He's only 28 years old, which you think would be your prime as a lineman. So to hear he's descending, according to this individual, is concerning. Now, I think you've got to look at this from the Cowboys standpoint. That's your backup guards. They're going to have to start for you. Tyron Smith is not going to stay healthy. So you are going to have a point during this season, and hopefully it's just for maybe a game or two, but the odds are it's going to be more like 4 to 6, where you're going to play Tyler Smith at left tackle, and one of these guys is going to start at guard for you.
Let's finish up around the NFC East. Great thoughts on that, guys. I think they just roll with TJ Bass for the next 2 or 3 games, and if they like what they have, then they stand pat. But if not, you'll be at cut-down day, and there will be hopefully a batch of veterans or a trade to be made, because I would not want to go with the offensive line as it sits right now. We'll see in a couple of more preseason games. In Washington, the commies have done a big deal with Bud Light. They like each other again, I guess, now that Daniel Snyder is out. Sam Howell is closing in on QB1 officially. And the big story, though, is the joint practices with the Ravens. And Zay Flowers has been dominant with his route and his separation ability.
Short guy that can make plays. I mean, you watch the Boston College tape, he was electric. I've never seen anybody run as fast as he does, stop and get everybody to run by him, and then start running again.
Special player.
He is a special player.
Could become the best receiver from this class.
Absolutely.
The Ravens could be scary, man. As long as Lamar Jackson is healthy. I mean, at least offensively. Their defense, they're suffering some injuries. Who knows how that shakes out? But I think offensively, as long as Lamar Jackson is healthy, that should be a lot of fun.
And I saw they aren't giving Odell Beckham a lot of practice time, but he's looked good in what he has done.
They're trying to conserve him for the season. That's what they need him for.
Yeah, it's smart.